here we go. Bringing on the next panel. We've got Blair MacIntyre with us, David Bass-Clark, and Kai. How are you guys? Welcome.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, let's do, we don't need to go too much into, what we all do, but let's do a quick round robin of where everybody lives, works, what they do. Blair, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm a professor at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. I've been here about 20 years doing augmented reality, virtual reality, been doing web-based AR since about 2010. And I spent the last 4 years at Mozilla working on WebXR.
Amazing. David, I'm just going around in the circle here that I've got. Go ahead, David.
Hi, my name is David Bass-Clark. I'm the Director of AR, VR Research and Development at Unity College up here in beautiful Maine.
Not to be confused with Unity Technologies.
Thank you. Always remind me. I should be the one that remembers.
I have to say that just to make sure
because people get confused.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kai.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kai Frazier. I am an educator by trade and now an entrepreneur as the founder and CEO of KaiXR. We are a inclusive and accessible 360 VR platform where kids can explore, dream, and create and take some cool VR field trips.
Amazing. So where have you gone lately? Why don't we start there?
Trying to think, where's the last VR field trip I did? Okay, don't laugh at me. We were looking at an Elton John VR experience for his last concert, and I thought it was phenomenal. I had a good time watching it.
Amazing. And I think, that just kind of lends itself to the fact that education can come from so many different places now, right? And, once upon a time ago, that concert, let's categorize that into entertainment and put it over here. But what we learn from these experiences now and the user interface and that sort of thing is part of education because we're all learning. That's why we're all here today, right? Is there a piece that you put into your work from that? Like, was there a follow-up or something that the students did?
Of course. So we let kids explore all different sounds, monuments, museums, whatever they want. And we give them viewing guides around this so they can talk about it. What are you hearing? What does this sound like? Would you like to go into music? What are some jobs in music? So it's like a starting off point to start the conversation. And the reason why it's super important is because I worked with a lot of students who grew up like myself, who we never left our neighborhood. So we didn't know that these other things were in front of them that were possible. And those virtual field trips make the whole world come right to our footsteps so we can talk about it and explore.
Amazing. All right, let's, I want to flip over to you, Blair, and let's talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing, because I know you've been bringing some students into WebXR to teach them and to host some of your classes. And maybe you can talk and share a little bit about your experience as an educator.
Sure. So since I got back to tech, I've last year taught a 3D user interface class in the spring and the fall. And this is for CS seniors. So this is, a programming intensive class. And of course, the first offering was interrupted last March, as was many of our experiences. And so I think the two interesting things from my point of view with respect to WebXR was I finally taught this class because I could finally give every student in the class a device, right? Before this, we've taught, I think we've all probably taught in environments where there's like 50 kids and four graphics computers or something. And so every student in the class had a Quest. And then the second time I added in some Windows mixed reality displays that Microsoft loaned me. But it meant, the combination of WebXR, which meant that they could use their crappy old laptop that they've had for 4 years since they started college and not have to worry about Unity killing it. And the fact that they all had displays means that as we transitioned to remote and then did remote again in the fall, I used hubs for poster sessions and other kinds of group activities so the students could feel like they were still in a class and still interacting with each other and get some experience presenting. It had the the secondary pedagogical benefit that they're learning about how to create 3D user interfaces, and they actually should use them maybe to try to do something. So that was really nice. And the other actually interesting thing, and then I'll stop, is that I teamed up with some folks at UGA and Cornell and Austin, and we had our students in the fall, every week or two, they had to have a social VR experience with someone who wasn't in the class, a parent, a friend, and then do a journal about it. And that actually was really interesting too, because again, it forced the students to have these sort of direct kind of 3D experiences with people when a lot of them are isolated at home and stuff.
Yeah, this is something that I've been working on for quite a long time, is trying to introduce and have the conversation about spatial learning. So let's start there. We have never taught 3D in school beyond blocks and Legos and that sort of thing. You know, my daughter the other week, she was doing geometry and she was doing shading on a 2D piece of paper that her teacher shipped over. Print this off and take a pencil and start shading. And it seems so antiquated now. So that conversation of spatial learning is so important. That's something that I know David and I, we've had these conversations because we're about to launch a couple of courses that will introduce this from that basic level. And maybe David, if you want to talk a little bit about Unity College's approach to introducing these courses from that, from that basic level. Where do you start to teach about spatial learning with the depth and dimensions and just that thought process of thinking a little bit more than that piece of paper on your desk?
Yeah, you got to give me an easier question. I think so. We have sort of multiple goals, but two of our main goals are to not only sort of use XR to democratize access and break down those barriers like Kai was talking about earlier in terms of being able to get and feel like we're in a different space, time, or place than we otherwise might be able to be in a normal environment, but also thinking about how, as both Blair and Kai have mentioned, giving agency to the learner to create their own spaces. And as you said, Julie, thinking about, well, what tools do we need? And a lot of it is rethinking the way that we interact with space itself and what is afforded to us now that we are in these environments. And so it's one way I like to think about it is when you see a lot of companies building digital twins of campuses that are for learning, they sort of model what we know, right? What faculty, what staff, what teachers are currently comfortable with, like whiteboards and PowerPoint presentations and 2D on 3-dimensional things. And that can be powerful, but what's really powerful, I think, is pushing beyond that. And so we get our students to think and create full experiences that are messing with the idea of time and place in ways. For example, one of our students is creating a camping experience. So what does it feel like if you've never been camping? What are the things you might need to know to leave no trace, and thinking about what does that actually look like? And that's not an experience that we would think about teaching by drawing pictures of it as much, but actually going there and thinking about what do you actually do in the physical space and how does it leave trails? What impact are you having on your environment? So, and then Julie, you and I, working together to think about how do we explain some of these concepts to, as one of our instructional designers puts it, the sort of to your grandmother. If you had to explain some of these spatial learning concepts in such a way that anyone could understand it, even people that have never, put on one of these before, or someone who has no idea what we're talking about here, how would you explain those concepts? And we try to break those down and put them into little micro courses and make them as free as or as cheap as we can to democratize access to that. And so that's what we're excited about launching. And Metaverse is a big part of that with some of those micro courses as well. I don't know if I can put links in here at some point, I think, if I learn how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Kai, is there anything that you're working on right now that you'd like to share that applies to WebXR? Because I know you've built out so many different experiences, and I'd love it if you could just share some of the experiences that you had with some of the students.
Yeah, sure. So I will say that from being an educator for a long time, something that that Blair mentioned that's very common is that we don't know what devices the kids have. People in tech, they make this tech thinking every kid has a top of the line Quest or amazing a laptop that can run Unity with no issues. The joke we have on our team is like our computers have asthma, because as soon as we start running something, the fans start going. We had to like stop with the kids and everything, and that's common. So what does a world look like if we build for all of these instances, whether, most of my students have smartphones, but they may not have laptops or Wi-Fi? What does that look like? So at KaiXR, our main bread and butter is building our platform. So we have a WebXR platform that works on any devices from smartphone to VR headset. And there you can explore lots of VR experiences. But we take it a step further. We are working on rolling out our viewing guides now. So a lot of things that we see, maybe a kid does one of our VR field trips or virtual field trips is to the official Obama portrait. So you may go there, you may look at the portrait of Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and then what next? I think one of the things that the VR field falls short sometimes is that what's before and what's next. So we have some previewing questions. Before you get there, what is a portrait? Have you been to a museum? What's an exhibition? What's your favorite piece of art? And then after they watch it, now what? Why are these portraits different? Why are they a big deal? What would you paint? What's missing from the museum? So really expanding their knowledge. So we have over 100 plus virtual field trips that do that. And then our next phase that we're going into for Q3, Q4 is to add the maker space, building off of hubs and making a really kid-friendly place where kids can drag and drop and take those ideas that they're getting from those VR field trips. They're exploring. We teach them a little bit about VR, and we teach them how to dream in VR, and then we have them create afterwards. So, moonshot pie in the sky vision is explore, dream, create, so they can explore VR field trips, dream in VR and 360, and some of the things David was just talking about. How do you stretch their mind? A lot of times for adults, what we do is we tell them what to do and ask them to do it. Instead, we have to put a question out to them and say, if you had to get from point A to B, how would you get there? Not make a car. So just how do we actually stretch their knowledge? And then the last part of our platform is create. So we're working on that makerspace now so they can take all that knowledge and then create stuff that I can't even think about. I always try to, ground myself in whatever I think the kids can do, they take it to a whole nother level. So to answer your question, Julie, is we are really working on having that, interactive experience that kids can do and provide the stepping stones, regardless of what device they have, they can still find their place in an immersive world.
Yeah, well, first of all, having the kids participate already engages them, and then you've kind of won right there, because, before all of this technology, the kids weren't checked in. But if you're constantly asking them questions and they can interact with those questions and answer, that's such an advanced move compared to the classrooms that we've been coming from. Blair, what kind of tidbits do you have that you use to engage the students into things when you're teaching them? I know Kai mentioned asking questions before and after. Is there anything else that you use to entice that, or are the students already lining up and they're already entered and waiting for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, since I've been teaching mostly, upper division CS classes. It's a pretty self-selected audience in that space. Interestingly, both semesters, about a tenth of the students in the class couldn't really use the VR devices because they got motion sick, right? And which is crazy to me. People who aren't used to it need they need to be oriented. They need to sort of be prompted as to, what they should do when they get there, so that they can learn it and understand it, but nothing sort of at the level of the stuff Kai's talking about. It's mostly programming classes for me.
But it's still teaching new things. Yeah, go ahead, David. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, but that's the foundation of a lot of, we're talking about WebXR Developer Summit. I think we are so hungry, I know the industry, for more people to have, as you put it, Kai, building device agnostic experiences using technologies like WebXR. Right. We're going to need not only developers and people who can jump into Unity and things like that for C# scripts, but also people who can do no code and still think in a spatial learning and design way. And then people who are UX and UI and game designers. And we just need so many more people focused on this. So I think it's no small feat to be teaching the sort of hardcore development skills that are going to help build this.
And I have to say that I'm preparing the babies for you. Blair has older kids. I have younger kids. So, I'm making sure that they get to Blair. They're like, wow, I've already been thinking like that. And then they can go on to do great things at that level.
And I love, Kai, the idea of, to me, it's even for older people, it's for, people of all ages. It's the idea that you can be you have superpowers. You can go back in time. You can design any world you can imagine. And it can be used, again, with these, devices we have, but it can be used on a flat screen or even on a mobile in some cases. And really, I think for developers, one of the keys is going to be continuing to push the optimization and making sure that it is optimized for even an old phone, so that someone that has a 5-year-old phone can access this. And what are the types of experiences that we can build that are not going to tap into the tech side of things? So like water shaders, right? Water shaders are notoriously difficult in sort of these high-tech, all-in-one devices and mobiles. But I think, can we think about things that maybe don't involve water shaders? Like, what is available to us today that can really make the technology shine and showcase what it can do, so that we can catch up with those sort of technical things in the next 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big things that I try to get across to them is that it's building things where people do stuff as opposed to see stuff, right? You learn by doing. And so, yeah, we're not going to do fancy shaders. We're not going to worry about photorealistic graphics. We're going to worry about behaviors on objects. We're going to worry about having things that you interact with and can talk about to other people. One of the reasons I loved Hubs and why I used it in teaching is just because of this sort of reciprocity, where if I'm doing something or looking at something, everyone else can tell I'm doing that. And it does create an environment that's more like a physical learning environment, where kids can, if you see someone who's just sitting there not doing anything, you can go over to them and be like, hey, do you have a problem? Right? And you don't get that in sort of solo environments.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I wanted to touch on again was just the accessibility of 3D. And, 3D has been around for a while, sure, but not the way that we're all dealing with it now. And the way that I explain it a lot is 3D is the gateway into VR and AR. And we've got 7 billion devices that are 3D enabled out there. So how can we leverage that, especially in areas where they don't have access to headsets yet? And, we want to work towards democratizing education to the fullest of what is possible out there. So that's one of the missions of Metaverse is my company, not Metaverse, the engine is to operate the engine on every single 3D enabled device, so that people can get used to dealing with that spatial learning. So I think we have a couple of
didn't know that you had the same problem I have with Metaverse and Unity.
Metaverse, different spelling, different one. I know we have a couple of questions from the audience, and education's a really big topic. We can go down, we didn't even talk about game-based learning or anything like that. I do have a couple of questions. I'll show them on the screen, but I think one of the questions here is about teachers being overwhelmed with this technology. Right. And that's, we can have a whole, long conversation about that. But this one here that just came in, is there ever a problem getting the teachers to feel motivated about the technology as much as the students? And if there's ever resistance, how do we get over it? I have an input, and then I'll pass it over to you guys, is the students, just like you said, Kai, they're way ahead of us. And so we now need to worry about the teachers keeping up with the students, because as soon as they have access to this technology, they're just going to take off. They're going to take off, and they're going to learn, they're going to discover. And this is where I always say that teachers and students need to learn together. And I think that's a perspective of a teacher coming into a classroom and being open with the students that, first of all, let's learn together. I don't know this, neither do you. Let's learn together. But maybe the three of you have other opinions of what other advice can you give out there to teachers that are listening that may be overwhelmed with this technology?
I could talk all day about this topic. So I will say that this is a new type of literacy, right? So digital literacy. So when you're teaching a kid to read, it is the parent, the teacher, and the student that have to work together to make that trifecta so the learning sticks. So I think for a lot of the, WebXR stuff, we've excluded the parents and the educators from learning. We want the kids to get there, but nobody's thinking about what about like the parents. The kids want to go home and talk to the parents about it as well. So we've had to learn that our success is only as good as how quickly can we onboard the teachers and how quickly can we get the parents to buy in. So they are encouraging that learning and picking up that headset or that smartphone for the reason of this. So I'm going to stop there because people have other comments, but I think that for us, the biggest obstacle is not will the student use it, it's are the teachers going to have to learn a whole bunch of other stuff when they want a microwave ready solution, and when they have everything on their plate on top of learning new digital tools from COVID, are they going to learn this? And it's our job as the creators to make it as simple as possible for them.
Yeah, I piggyback. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you go, David.
No, go ahead.
Okay. My feeling, so I taught a couple of classes at my kids' middle school and high school and helped at the elementary school CS class as well. And I mean, I think the thing that I would like to see is more tools that are actually built with teachers in mind that are devoted to specific topics. So there's a teacher at my kids' high school who is going to be using hubs in her English class and having the students sort of create spaces for sort of visual poems. And so it's just images and text, right? And it's really easy to create in something like hubs. And so that's a really good match, right? You don't have to learn programming. You don't have to learn things that are too heavyweight. I mean, she was willing to take that risk. And so that's the thing I think that's super important. And Kai's stuff is well targeted at the audience, right? For them to use it. It's focused. It's not like you're going into Oculus Home and having to like find things and install things and run things and use these really generic user interfaces. So I think that is a big thing.
Yeah, I think there's a company that did a really great job with this, and they've scaled pretty rapidly in the ed tech space. They're called Seesaw. They're not actually in the immersive learning space, but early on I was chatting with them, and I think we sometimes think we have to get, even as administrators or as leadership, that we have to get buy-in from a large amount of teachers. And I think it's more about having ambassadors or having champions. And that's where I think having one or two, don't fight the tide. Don't bring the people that are kicking and screaming, not even the people who are scared and unsure. Go out there and find the teachers that are like all in and work with them to help make the case. Once they're big buy-in and you can see what the kids are doing, people will follow, right? When the value is there, people will go to it. But prove out the value with the path of least resistance, I think, is really important. And some people, I think, are going for we're not trying to hit the average teacher with an emerging technology. I think that's my personal opinion.
No, don't think we can.
Nope. I wanted to touch base on this question here, talking about the future of experiential education. And I've got an input here on simulation and game-based learning, which, Kai, you were just talking about an experience where you're asking questions at the beginning of an experience just to kind of set the stage for them, or maybe it's the experience on where they start. And my opinion there is, we're going to be adding a gamification component to all of this stuff. It's the only way that you keep people engaged. Right now we're competing against Fortnite and Roblox with the kids. How do we bring them into the educational classroom and make it as exciting as Fortnite, to be able to collect things and win things and get that heightened feeling of, ooh, I learned something. And maybe if, Kai, if you wanted to add a little bit more, sorry, scroll back to that question there, but a little bit more about the game-based learning and how we'll implement that into experiential education.
Yeah, one of the things that is a little irritating to me sometimes when we are pitching our company to maybe investors or something is they say that this feels too gamey, or this doesn't feel like education. This feels like a gimmick. And I'm hoping that we get to that place where learning is fun. We can have, gamification in learning and things like that. And I think it's going to take all of us to think about, what are we also incentivizing? I think that for, one of the things we hear is like, how do you know they're learning? How do you know things are, doing better? But there's a lot of different elements we have to think about. What are we incentivizing, and what are the key results we want to see how are they demonstrating they're learning their knowledge? And I think that's going to be a larger conversation for the community as a whole to decide, what do we want to see? What does success look like? When do we know a kid is doing exactly what we want them to do? Or we're seeing some of the habits we want. Some of the simplest things that are really frustrating to me. Sorry, I have an incense blowing that's all on the camera. One of the things that's really interesting to me is that we incentivize right answers. Like, you got it right, you did it, instead of incentivizing the process that you took. So I would like to see gamification that really puts a emphasis on troubleshooting, and as for a lack of better terms, like, you actually worked through it, you figured out the problem, and maybe it took you some longer time, but you got there. And that's what I'm hoping to see in a lot of these educational tools that I think we can really do in immersive learning, as opposed to zero-sum game, yes, no, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just watching the time. We've only got a couple of minutes, and I'm always about sharing. We've got 100 people listening here and throughout the metaverses and all that stuff. Maybe, what is your 2 cents to be able to share today on how educators would get started? Are there any tools that you would like to suggest and share for them to grow and in their own knowledge base? And Blair, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think picking up tools that are easy to approach first, that are generic, that you can sort of play with. So one of the reasons that teacher used hubs was because she could go in and it was immediately obvious how you could put images and text and just play around with it. And so picking environments like that let people actually just play and use as teachers and see how they could fit it in with their current pedagogical practices, as opposed to having to develop whole new lesson plans and whole new ways of evaluating, is the way that I would start.
Yeah. What about you, David?
I think people are probably watching this are in all different places. So I'm going to speak to kind of people that are overwhelmed. I agree completely with Blair that there's metaverse, there's rapid prototyping tools, there's all kinds of tools that help you build in 3D environments, and hubs, synchronous meeting tools and things like that. Once you're hooked, once you're in, I think pushing past that and asking that question, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? What am I afforded that was impossible? And we think about things like, now we can all fly, right? Now we can become a fly on the wall, and actually, what is a bug's view of this? What is a giant's view of this? And I think that's where and as Kai said earlier, just giving the ability and the agency of the learner to explore what's possible in these environments. And so open-ended creative assignments tend to work really well for these types of experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Kai, what about you?
Sure. I want to take a different approach. I'm going to say that I really hope that educators, wherever they're watching, really hone in on our non-virtual educational practices and how to bring them into a virtual space. One of the things that I see a lot of is we throw away all of our educational teachings and pedagogy and everything just to go straight to the virtual world. And it's a big gap that, I'm seeing with the kids and what they're retaining. So I would say, please, some of your teaching practice, like I'm saying, starting with a question, that's drawing on background knowledge. That's teaching 101, so I would say really look at your own teaching practices, what's doing well, and how can you make virtual extensions. And I have to plug myself. We're building at WebXR, so keep an eye on us. We are really trying to solve that problem too. As a teacher, how do we get you onboarded and give you those stepping stones so we can be a one-stop shop so you can learn all about AR, VR, 360, and whatever else the kids may invent that we haven't even seen yet.
Amazing. And I think I'll just finish off by saying teachers need to have more confidence in the students, even right at the young age. They know how to turn those iPads on and those phones on, and they know where to go and which apps to open. And I know we're talking WebXR here, but, introducing that technology to students and allowing them to have the freedom of creativity and giving that to them it's a great start. And I guess I'll finish that off here because I know Trevor's joined us to bring on the next panel. Blair, Kai, and David, thank you so much for joining me today on this education panel and being a part of the WebXR Developer Summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
so much for having us.